Robots and Cyborgs, next on Retro Serial. Hey everyone, welcome to Retro Serial. I'm your host, DNC. On today's program, we have the Unapologetic Geek joining us for a lively conversation about robots and cyborgs, and we talk about the ones we really liked, the ones we really hated, and the ones we really feared and hoped didn't come true, along with a few side conversations about consciousness and all that other stuff. But I'm not going to bore you with a long introduction. You're going to hear about all of this when we get to the interview. But before we get to the interview, would you please do me the honor of hitting that like button, hitting the subscribe button, and share it on your favorite social media. Those three things are free for you to do, and they mean the world to me here at Retro Serial. And if you're listening to this on podcast, please, by all means, hit the subscribe button and hit the share button, and also hit the ratings and the review. Those things right there also help us get the word out about this great podcast and YouTube page. And if you're listening on podcast, I'm very happy you're joining us, but always know that there is more content over on the YouTube page. It just doesn't quite transfer over to podcast platform, but wherever you're listening to, it doesn't matter to me. I'm just glad you're in the house and you are enjoying the program. And also, please, if you want to know when these things are available, hit the bell notification. You won't miss a single episode. And if you're feeling generous at all and you want to support us financially and help me grow this YouTube mogul empire, by all means, click the links below to the Patreon page where you will find two levels of support. The first is the Cornflake Club. It's $3 a month. It's just a tip jar. It says, hey, we like what you're doing over there, Retro Serial. Please keep it up. But if you want to be on the Insiders Club, you have to join the Honeycomb Hideout. It's $5 a month, but with that, you get most all videos and podcasts a day in advance, at least advanced enough that you can say, I listened to it before you all listen to it, and you can be a Retro Serial snob. And if you want to just give a one-time donation, we have that available, because a lot of people, they want to, you want to give a one-time to the show, but you don't want somebody taking money out of your account every month. I get it, even if it's a small amount. You might not want that to happen, but you might want to throw a little scratch our way over here. Well, we have a way for you to do that too. That's Venmo, and it's at Singularity Productions, Singularity_Productions, that is. And you will find that in the links below as well as finding the link to the Unapologetic Geeks page, and also Thrash Pondo Pons' page. Please go over there to their channels and subscribe as well. With all that said, let's go ahead and get to today's program. All right. Hey, everyone. I am here with the Unapologetic Geek, Tug, and my good friend Thrash Pondo Pons. How you doing, everybody?
Hello.
Howdy, y'all.
I am so excited to have you here. Now, do you like being called Tug?
Yeah, call me Tug. It's fine. The Unapologetic Geek can be kind of a mouthful.
Right. Exactly. And
I coined the term, by the way.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Right.
It was during my live chats, and he was like making like comments in my comment section. I'm trying to read them off. I'm like, can I just call you Tug? Yeah.
Right on. And we're going to be talking about one of, I think, of all of our favorite subjects, and that's sci-fi.
Of course.
But we want to narrow it down. I mean, we don't want to just do sci-fi again for sci-fi. We kind of want to talk about something a little bit more narrow. So I thought of the topic, our favorite robots, and I am going to include cyborgs in there as well. So it's the floor is open as wide as we want to open it to this subject, and it doesn't have to be our favorites either. Like, what might be my favorite, you might hate the guy or something like that. One of you might really love Twiggy, and I just want to kick that little robot across the room so far that you couldn't believe it. But before we start, I gotta say I love your shirt.
Yes, I'm wearing the Star Trek red shirt.
So are you, if you have to choose Star Trek, Star Wars, what are you, team Star Trek?
Yeah, I'm Team Star Trek. I mean, I love Star Wars, but definitely Team Star Trek.
Right, right, right. I get it. In all honesty, so I'm probably more team Star Wars myself, but in quite all honesty, there is just as much in Star Trek that I like as there is in Star Wars. It really is kind of just a split for me, a 50-50. It's just like there's as much in Star Trek and Star Wars that I both like and dislike. Let's put it that way. There are
Yeah,
things
fair enough.
yeah, the only reason I kind of give it a little bit more towards Star Wars is because of the whole Jedi thing. I just that just resonates with my soul. I just so wanted to be a Jedi as I grew up. So that's it. But there's so much about Star Wars that I dislike as well. So I mean, and there's so much about Star Trek that I actually love. So now, red shirt. Why red shirt?
Because when it came time for me to buy a shirt, I had to pick a color, and red just stood out to me.
Right
it brings
on.
out your eyes.
Yeah. That's because I'm a Sith. Yeah.
Oh wow, we got a crossover going here. But and also before we start, I kind of wanted to get to know you a little bit more. Talk about your channel a little bit, and how long have you had the channel actually?
About 3 years now, I think.
Okay, all right.
It's been so long that I don't remember when I started anymore.
And just let everybody know. I mean, obviously, we're here are all fans, but in case there's somebody out there who isn't, tell us a little bit about your channel and what was it that made you start it?
Well, it's like we said, it's called The Unapologetic Geek, and I just do a lot of reviews of old sci-fi movies. What got me started is I've been keeping a blog for about 20 years, and a lot of the people who read it were telling me that I should branch out into YouTube. And I did some film studies in college. I learned a lot about film editing and all that. And I'm a big movie buff. I've always been a big movie buff. So it seemed natural. It took me a long time to pull the trigger because I procrastinate. Um, but yeah, I like to go over the history of the movie instead of just telling you what I think of it. I like to talk about all the little trivia and the story behind the making of the movie and stuff like that. I'm kind of like a distilled version of the special features on a DVD.
That's awesome. And you feel free to go into that as much as you want through this interview. Okay.
Yeah,
Because
sure.
I mean, I am just interested in all that stuff. And I know that the audience that we appeal to is interested in it as well. And everybody knows that I do kind of, I don't just do sci-fi over what I do. I do Gen X history, Gen X entertainment, Gen X issues kind of thing. And there really isn't anything more Gen X than the entertainment industry and sci-fi and entertainment industry. So that's one that we revisit quite a bit. And we've picked up a lot of people who are like, oh yeah, I'll watch because of that. So feel free to go as deep as you want on any of these issues. And I don't really know. I mean, I didn't really have a script here to like, like a point by point. Should we go through history? Should we go through earliest robots to latest robots? Or should we go through favorite to least favorite? I don't know. I'm going to throw out some robots and I'm going to have both you guys riff on them. I'm going to riff on as well. And I think what we'll do is we'll go around the room. I'll throw out a robot and we'll talk about them. And then the next person will be able to, we'll throw out a robot or whatever, and then talk about it or whatever. And it can be anything from book to movie to small screen. There's just no limits, but we have to start with the famous duo R2D2 and C3PO. Okay. I mean, we have to start with that. Yeah, I didn't know whether or not to keep it to the end or just, shoot right out of the gate, but I've got lots of them. So, R2D2 and C3PO. Let's go, Thrash. I'm going to go with you first. I'm going to put you on the spot. Okay. Tell me what you think of these. Tell me a little bit about what you love about them, what you hate about them. Go ahead.
Well, you couldn't have picked a better duo of robots to start with. And when you look at R2D2 and C3PO, they're really the natural extension of comic relief through cinema. I mean, let's face facts. They're not just a robot pair. They're Laurel and Hardy. They're Abbott and Costello. They're just two buddies who act like they hate each other but couldn't live without each other, who end up being at the right place at the right time and usually not just being the comic relief but saving the day. The really interesting thing about these two is, now I'm sure as everyone here knows and everyone here watching knows, of course, Star Wars is loosely adapted from the Hidden Fortress. And the characters of C3PO and R2D2 are actually very loosely adapted from, now I'm not going to go into the whole story of Hidden Fortress, but it's a samurai movie. And it takes place after a devastating war. And basically, R2D2 and C3PO are adapted from these. They're two deserters who are buddies who act like they hate each other, are constantly bickering, but end up giving the main character, the hero, if you will, a lot of really important information he needs to help him, complete his adventure. So, as far as characters go, they're ideal. As far as robots go, there's something that we've seen for decades, but I think perfected with these two, and that is the fact is they are robots or droids, if you will, but they're not. They're characters. I don't want to say human, but we never stop and think of them as robots. C-3PO is probably the most articulate of the group, and while R2-D2 only speaks in bloop, 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 C-3PO understands every word and translates more through innuendo than actual direct translation. But it's like having a friend who just speaks a foreign language. It's not robot talk. It's just a language I can't understand. Basically basic in beeps. So C-3PO, I can't say that there's before and after them, but they were sort of the high watermark of what Gen X would consider robot characters.
Very good points. I agree with every single one of them, except for every single one of them. No, I'm kidding.
Great country.
No. They're good points. I want to digress for just a second, and then I want you to comment, Tug, on R2D2 C3PO. But I want to ask you specifically, what do you think the importance of robots are in sci-fi? Why do all sci-fi movies have robots? Why do we appeal to them? Why do we like them? That kind of thing. Is it important? I mean, what do you think, Tug?
Well, I think in sci-fi you deal with a lot of things that try to reflect what it means to be human. And robots and aliens are both used in that way to kind of act as a foil against humanity in general. And I think robots are especially interesting because robots are something that humans usually have created. And so you see our own humanity reflected in the way that they behave. But they also are given very logical ways of thinking, mathematical, computerized, and that kind of reflects how much of the human condition is dominated by irrationality or emotion. This is, very Asimov, very positronic man, and Data from Star Trek. And I think that's what robots really mean first for sci-fi. I've seen them used in other ways, but 99% of all robots in sci-fi are used as a foil to explore humanity.
Right, yeah, and I would add to that too. It's kind of the thing we all want. We dream of robots doing jobs for us that we just can't do, or whatever. We think of the future. We think of robots. That's just something I think that's ingrained in us. And like in the future, there are going to be robots that'll do this, and we don't ever think of robots to take our jobs, but we think of robots. C-3PO is going to be working as a court translator and putting all the court translators out of business kind of a thing. But we want it, in one way we're like, oh, I'm sorry that person will lose their job because of a robot will take over. But in one sense, we don't want to pay a maid. We want a robot who will clean the house for us. So, all right. You're up, Tug, with C-3PO and R2-D2. Your thoughts?
I really enjoy the droids in Star Wars because they're completely unexplained. Like nobody ever gets into, where the droids come from. Are the droids conscious? That kind of stuff that most sci-fi gets obsessed with when it comes to anything Android, is just sidestepped completely in Star Wars. And I appreciate that because it allows the story to use them as characters rather than use them as like a philosophical foil or something. But still, even in the original Star Wars, there's a little bit of, socio-political commentary in the fact that the droids aren't allowed in the bar. There are no droids.
Right.
So it's allowed to have a little bit of just a touch of some kind of social commentary without actually invoking racism in a galaxy where there's like hundreds of different alien races and stuff. It still shows that droids are treated as less than human in some way. And so like those philosophical questions can spring from that, but it's all just organically happening in your head because the story itself doesn't go there. And I like that. And R2-D2 and C-3PO, what I was going to say, Thrash already stole my thunder. They're basically Abbott and Costello.
Right.
And it's great. Yeah. I love R2-D2 and C-3PO.
Yeah, they're great characters. They get a little bit more annoying as the story goes along. I generally like them in the original series. In the prequels, they get a little bit more annoying, and I've only seen the other ones like one time, so I wouldn't know. But
they're not too bad in the sequels, but yeah, in the prequels, there's a couple of times where they get really annoying. Especially there's one sequence in Attack of the Clones where C-3PO gets his head put on a droid and it's all goofy and it doesn't work for me at all.
No, and
just one liner after another.
It's just very silly. It takes you out of the moment.
Right. And what's interesting is out of those three prequels, that was my favorite one, was Attack of the Clones. And that just was the one spot in it that kind of ruined it for me. What's interesting is you brought up that they were kind of looked at as less, and they don't explain it. They said we don't want their kind in here, and I always thought maybe like because droids, like you could access it, so if there's something illegal going on in there, then they could get it recorded. They could pull them aside, and the authorities could extract the information out of them or something like that. So I thought maybe that's why. And that was just something. It doesn't tell you exactly why that their kind's not allowed, but I think in my mind that, like putting the backdrop together was like, oh, well, because that's a bar and illegal stuff's going on and people are selling death sticks and stuff like that. So, if the authorities ever wanted to crack down, that would be the worst thing to do, is to have a droid in your pub.
That is such an excellent point that I feel dumb for never having thought it.
Wow. Well, that's why we have a community. You know what I mean? You think of things I don't think of, and everybody thinks of things that, other person thinks of. But to your point as well, I really like the fact, like you brought this up, and that is that they don't explain consciousness. It's not, or they don't explain like where they come from. It's not like iRobot or something like that,
Right.
Where the whole movie is about like, does this person have consciousness? Does this person not have consciousness? And I really think that that was the genius of early George Lucas. And he wrote a story in which things already exist as they are, like we don't like it makes it more believable. And that's really the mark of a good sci-fi story is thing like, I don't walk around, explaining the microwave. I don't walk around going, and this is a microwave. And, it's just a microwave. I just use it. I don't think about where it came from or whatever. People thought about where, how to make it, but once it's introduced into the society, that's the way it is. And I think that would be the same in reality. If the reality was there was droids, that would be the same thing. It would be cool for a little while. Probably people would have conversations, but after 50 or 60 years, you'd stop having those conversations. You'd just, hey, that's my robot. Hey, go fetch me my paper or whatever. Go clean the oven or whatever. You wouldn't sit around and have those conversations for the most part.
This was a great thing that was happening in the 70s when it came to sci-fi cinema, is that like they were taking science fiction, and instead of trying to show you everything as it grows organically, like they just throw you into a universe where all this stuff already exists. You've got, Alien or Silent Running, which kind of had droids, the precursors to Star Wars. In Star Wars, where there are these built, lived-in universes where the people aren't questioning or aren't even like pointing out the things that we would find fantastic, where they're just treating it like everyday stuff. And before the 70s in sci-fi, you didn't really get that, I don't think.
Yeah, I think
that's
so.
why Soylent Green worked as such an amazing film, in my opinion. It's an absolutely horrific future, but they don't even seem to notice. The only person who really points out how bad things have gotten to is Book, and that's only because he's an old man who actually can remember what things were like before they all went down the crapper. But the people who actually live in this world just go about their day-to-day routine. It's more police procedural than actual sci-fi. And if you read the book Make Room, Make Room, it's all police procedural and not sci-fi. It's just the science fiction is more of a backdrop. Now, it does have that iconic twist ending, which I won't spoil for us here. But I agree with you. I couldn't agree with you more. Films like A Boy and His Dog and other films, it's an immersive science fiction setting, and it really, really worked.
Very good. Very good. All right. I'm going to go, Tug, now. Please, you throw out a robot, a famous robot from pop culture, and then you go ahead and talk about it first this time, and then we'll hit the room with it. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, the robot that I've always loved and always had a big fascination with is Robbie the Robot. The Forbidden Planet and all of his little cameos after that. The fact that Hollywood kind of treated Robbie the Robot as an actual actor just blows my mind. Like, I love that. I love that he would randomly show up in like Mork and Mindy or Gremlins. He's just there. He's just a character. And that's one of the things that's so great about him, is that he's so obviously a robot, but at the same time, he's an actor.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to put it. I love that about him.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Talk about Robbie the Robot.
Well, I mean, of course, for me, the iconic thing that he's in is Lost in Space, and Lost in Space is a really great show, and Robbie the Robot like plays a crucial role, right? He's the guy in Lost in Space, right? I'm not messing
No, that's
up.
B9.
All right, I'm gonna shut up.
But no, they're very similar because they were designed by the same guy.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, then I'm gonna shut my mouth. You can take my geek card from me.
I would never do that.
We'll punch a little hole in it this time, but
I get 10 of those holes, and then after that, it's done. It's taken away. So why don't you go first, Thrash, and then maybe
as we all know,
to say that's actually intelligent about it after you talk.
As we all know, Robbie the Robot is the iconic robot from sci-fi film Forbidden Planet, loosely based on William Shakespeare's The Tempest. And Robbie Robot serves as I've been trying to think of it, Dr. Caliban, his manservant. And here we see the first time I can think of on film a quasi-adaptation of Asimov's 3 Laws of Robotics. That was of course came from iRobot, but we actually see it put into practical application here. And of course, as we all know, it's the robot can do no harm to a human being, regardless. And of course, Robbie has to question that. Now, the great thing about Robbie is he's quite arguably the first robot that I can think of where he's not I am a robot, you will follow me, you will be destroyed. And that very sort of mechanical, clunky possibly intelligent, but more just computerized logic. Robbie is articulate. He speaks like Gary Owens. You will excuse me. I require you to come this way, sir. And he's very genteel, even. He's possibly the most genteel character in the entire movie, which is funny because he plays off a lot of humans, Leslie Nielsen being one of them, who tend to be very almost crass. And the robot tends to be of a higher class than some of the humans, bringing back to Tug's point about we use robots as a reverse mirror to test our own humanity. And sometimes we come out on the bottom. And there literally is before Robbie the Robot and after Robbie the Robot. And I got to throw this into the equation. I always liked him because my name, of course, is Robert. And when I was a child, I went by Robbie. So Robbie the Robot strikes again.
Well, I don't have much to say as far as Robbie the Robot is concerned. So I'm just Thrash while you are on a roll there. And while I'm still getting the shoe out of my mouth, please, by all means, continue on with one of your favorite robots.
I'm going to cheat a little.
Okay.
I know we talked about Gen X, and I, of course, am older than both of you. Not combined, thankfully, although I have had that problem. My first experience with robots. Now, it's when I heard we were doing robots, I was over the moon. My obsession as a child was robots.
Mm-hmm.
Number one obsession was dinosaurs. But second only to dinosaurs was robots. And there's a reason for that. When I was a little kid, and we're talking 70, 71, there was a Japanese animated cartoon that I was obsessed with. It was a show called Gigantor.
Mm-hmm.
And it was about a little boy who had somehow, I think it's revealed in the pilot, it doesn't really germane to the plot, a little boy who somehow manages to become attached to this controller, to this giant robot who is basically a superhero. And they fight crime. They fight a global terrorist network. They fight bad robots. They fight monsters. They fight everything. And Gigantor became a symbol of strength to a child who had no strength. I became obsessed with the idea about having a giant robot that would basically have my back, like Gigantor did to this little boy. And we would go around and beat up bullies and mean dogs and have adventures. And I think that's where my obsession came with, which was later indulged by my parents, who were constantly buying me toy robots. In fact, I found one on eBay today because I've become obsessed with this the last couple of days. Does anybody had even heard of a toy line called King Ding?
No.
They were a line of robots. They were a line of toy robots. And they had like a little robot city and a little robot civilization. It was almost like something out of Brian Aldiss. But their leader was a robot called King Ding, and he was like this giant monster chassis. And a little robot would actually go inside of his brain case and serve as his brain robot. And it was sort of like a Master Blaster thing. And it was the coolest toy ever. And I used it to fight my other toys, usually my stuffed animals. But anyway, I became like literally the leader of an army of robots, at least in here. So again, it all started. The alpha patient was Gigantor, the giant robot.
So if robots were to fight dinosaurs, who would win?
Well, ultimately they would form an alliance, and they would all team up and attack whoever I told them to.
Right.
Because both sides would obey me. If I had to choose between dinosaurs and robots, because that is the game, I would have to go with robots, because you can fix a robot faster than a dinosaur could heal.
Yeah.
So after the battle, the robots would get their second win back, unless Godzilla was on the side of the dinosaurs.
Oh, right.
You got
right.
Mecha Godzilla. That's where I thought you were going when you're talking about dinosaurs and robots.
He came later. I was like 10 or 11 when the idea of a cyborg or Gaijin, a cyborg Godzilla, yeah. My mind just exploded.
I like what you brought up about Gigantor, because him fighting for the kid. And just to digress for just a minute, I mean, I grew up a geek, a nerd, I've talked about this before. I grew up being bullied, being picked on, kind of a thing. And I don't, not every geek has, I mean, now it's a thing. It's like, hey, it's cool to be a geek. It's cool to be a nerd. Now, when I was a kid, it was not,
No.
if I mean, it was not cool. You got bullied, you got picked on, kind of a thing. And one of the ways, it's almost like I don't know which came first, my love for robots that could stick up for you or something like that, or Jedis who had these powers or something like that. But I could totally see that. Here's this robot that can actually fight battles that you can't fight as a kid. And I saw myself escaping into that as well with robots, but also in different venues as well. Tug, room is yours. What do you think about Gigantor, or whatever you want to say about anything?
I barely know anything about Gigantor.
Okay, I get it. We all have our
just
holes.
too young.
We all have our holes in our knowledge of this. That's why we have to, nerds have to lean on each other, or geeks or whatever. When I was a kid too, like geek and nerd were like now it's like a little different. Like a nerd is somebody who's like more into math and science.
Yeah,
and
book smart. Yeah.
Somebody who's
The way
more
I heard
into
it put is,
sci-fi.
a nerd is someone who is transparently, shall we say, socially out of context. A geek is someone who they could almost get by until you mention something like Doctor Who. And they go, well, and that Genesis of the dialects, they have a geek trigger.
Yeah.
They have an obsession with something which actually shows them for their true colors, almost like a vampire's day warrior. but a nerd, no matter how much you take away their pocket protectors and their socks and sandals, they're going to be a nerd no matter what you do to them.
They're still out of place
Still
socially.
out of place, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So back to me. I'm going to go ahead and start with two of my favorite robots. Well, this comes from the same television show. And one of these days, I'm going to dedicate a whole episode to this. I'm thinking of, I've reached out to a guy named Brutal Moose. I don't know if you've seen his channel on YouTube. He doesn't really do a geek channel per se. He does a lot of very interesting stuff. He does a lot of stuff with food, but he is a huge fan of Mystery Science Theater 3000. And I can't let a show about robots go by without mentioning Crow T Robot and Servo. I couldn't choose between the two either. I loved both of those robots. And it's almost like, we all have this fear in sci-fi. Like a lot of sci-fi is written around this fear of what would go wrong. Like you have a robot and something goes wrong. Like, oh no, this went wrong. This didn't go the way I expected it to go. And that is Crow and Servo, but it went wrong like sarcastically, they weren't exactly maybe who they were supposed to be. It went wrong, but it went wrong in a funny, comical way. It's just like you can't control what these robots are thinking and what they're going to say next. It's just like you want your robots to do your bidding and to do what it is you program them to do. But it went wrong, but it didn't go wrong in a way that you're worried that they're going to kill you or they're going to take over society. It went wrong in like, what is the next thing that's going to come out of these dang robots' mouths? I got to keep them quiet. Like some parent who has kids that just are unruly. So I thought that whole team there was great, and Gypsy was great as well. Gypsy doesn't quite get as much love out of the three as the other one, and Cambot too. A lot of people forget about Cambot. There's Cambot, but but again, I think Gypsy and Cambot don't get as much talk because they are more off scene and stuff like that, where Servo and Crow T Robot are just these comical crack up robots. And what a genius show Mystery Science Theater was. I mean, from beginning to end, I loved it all. Let's start with you, Tug. What do you think about Crow T Robot? and Servo. Are you a fan of MST3K?
I do like it. I haven't watched it religiously,
Okay.
but I do enjoy it when I do watch it. But I do have a good anecdote.
Okay.
My brother met his future wife in line for Star Wars tickets. And when he proposed to her, what he did is he bought a full-sized Tom Servo and he put the engagement ring on Tom Servo.
Oh, wow.
So that's the kind of people I have in my family, so, we're all geeks. It's great.
That's awesome.
No, I do like that whole robots with adolescent humor and kind of adolescent sensibilities that you can't really trust them because, not that you can't trust them because you think they'll take over or something like that, but you can't trust them because they might wreck the place or throw a stupid party,
Right.
And who doesn't love a snarky robot? Everybody loves a snarky robot, right?
Right. Yeah. Thrash.
Been a huge fan of MST3K for at least 30 years. I had the opportunity there's a city just across the bridge. It's called Kingston, Mass. They actually were doing some of the simulcasts that the MST3K riff tracks people were doing. I got a chance to actually see simulcasts of Night of the Living Dead was my personal favorite. There was another one they did with is it called Octoman, about a killer octopus. It was a lot of fun actually getting to basically watch it in real time with them. But as far as the robots go, the robots are great. Crow is always my favorite. The expressions they got with his eyes, just by moving them in different directions, I thought was great. And I loved his snarkiness, although Tom Servo was great too. And you're so true. They're not evil in this and going to take over the world, but they get an idea stuck in their head and they can destroy the world. In the feature film, there's a great scene where Tom Servo gets the Great Escape stuck in his head. So he tries to dig a hole through the ship.
Yeah.
Right.
And Mike's like, no! I'm sorry. It was still Joel. Joel's like, no!
No, in the movie it was Mike.
I was pretty sure
it was
Mike.
okay. It was Mike. Thank you. I could never remember, but yes, that's because the robots are actually a bigger character than the human impresario. But yeah, you gotta love MST3K, and I gotta throw this in the mix. If any of you have ever seen Troops, which is a Star Wars spoof set in an episode of Cops, where they follow the adventures of these stormtroopers, they find what they think are these aren't the droids we're looking for. They find Tom Servo and Crow T Robot, and it's a great wink to MST3K, and a very good short, I must say.
Yeah. Well, I had a hard time accepting Mike at the very beginning. I don't know if you did or not, but
change is hard.
It was real hard, especially because I fell in love with the program with Joel. I mean, I just fell in love with the program with him. And so when he left, Mike had a little bit of an uphill battle for me personally, but I ended up really liking it, really liking Mike as well. So he had an uphill battle, but he conquered it. And I know that he was a writer anyway on the program
he was the head writer before he took over.
So I knew it wasn't going to change a whole lot. It was just kind of the sadness of seeing Joel leave, and it's like, oh gosh. I know he went on to do other things, but did you hear about it? Not really.
Well, I remember him. He'd been a stand-up comedian before he did MST3K.
Yep.
So he made a few SNL appearances. Gee, all these letter abbreviations. I feel like the man from U.N.C.L.E. But yes, some of his SNL appearances are still here on YouTube. He did this thing where he had like one of those hospital gurneys, the things that they carry the laundry around in, and he would just pull things out at random and then do a shtick on it. So it seemed impromptu, although he already had something funny to say about each one.
Right.
But it was really, really fun. But you're right, he never did much afterward. But I love his before stuff.
Yeah. I like his before stuff too. I have this question though, and we'll turn just a little bit. What do you think of the Isaac Asimov's laws? Do you like them? Do you hate them? What do you think, Tug? Do you think they're good, bad?
Well, I love them in Asimov because Asimov, he used robots as logic puzzles because Asimov was at heart a mystery writer, not a sci-fi writer. And so when he would use the laws of robotics, it was basically just a puzzle. Like, okay, this robot seems to have committed murder, but how is that possible given the laws of robotics? And he would take it to this like logical extreme that you don't necessarily you can't really think it through that far at first. That has to take you down this chain of logic until you're eventually like, oh, so that's why a robot would do that. It's kind of like if you've ever programmed anything, trying to find the one like flaw in your program is impossible and so difficult. And the same thing with robots. If robots, even with just 3 very simple laws, can go awry, things can go wrong. But Asimov was very clear. Robots aren't malicious. They're not evil. They're not really good either. They're just robots. And now there is an exception in R. Daniel Olivaw, who is like the robot of Isaac Asimov. And he was the one who lived really, really long and eventually like tied into Foundation and stuff like that. But no, so in Asimov, the laws of robotics are actually very clever and very interesting. And it's really fascinating to see how far Asimov can take it. Because he does. He takes it as far as he possibly can. But in other fiction, sometimes it's just used as a crutch and it's not really given a lot of thought. Like even in Aliens, Bishop, spouts one of the 3 laws, but it doesn't really seem to affect his character. Like you don't really buy it. That it's like another thing is that people tend to misinterpret it because in Asimov, the 3 laws are part of the actual like hardware of the robot. It's not just ingrained in them; it is part of them. Like they can't break them no matter what. Whereas other fiction that uses them treat them like programming laws and not actual like ingrained in the machine. That the machine would fail to function if it tried to break one of the laws. But in fiction, it's just change the programming, reprogram the robot, and you can get away with it. And that doesn't work with Asimov.
Yeah. Well, I had a thought there, and it just went right away from me. So it was a good follow-up to what you were saying there, and it's gone. Yeah. Okay. Well, it'll come back to me. I'm sure.
If it does, we will revisit the matter.
Right. Well, okay. Let's turn to maybe darker robots and stuff like that. Let's turn it a little bit, because one of the things with Asimov's law, you have robots who don't follow it or don't seem to follow it. They're doing harm to humans, like we all see that, like in iRobot, you know what I mean? But really they're following the law, but really they're not following it. It's just like you're saying, it looks like a paradox. But it's a logic puzzle. Like you got to figure out why this is happening. If you were a cyborg, would you want to know?
The Blade Runner question.
Yes.
Probably not.
Probably not. Yeah.
I think it would give me an existential crisis, and I don't need that in my life.
Right. Exactly. What about you, Robert? If you were
it would explain a lot. So I must confess I'd want to know. I think I would want to know.
Maybe. Yeah. I kind of am. Would be in between. I know that it would give me a new set of like things to deal with, personally, but it would also, if I was a robot, I would kind of have like a firm foundation to start from, to build out of, you know what I mean? It would be like, okay, I'm a robot. That's what I am. Now let's build off that. At least I'd have some type of basis to kind of go off of. It might change things, but I think in the end, I think I might want to know personally if I was a cyborg. But cyborgs is where robots that look human or half human, half robot, or whatever we want to call a cyborg, whether it's robots that look so real that you can't tell them apart, or or maybe a more traditional answer or definition would be there's some part of them that's human, like RoboCop or something like that. But I think that's where it all goes wrong. I think that's where you get to, oh my gosh, something's happening. We can't tell. In a world, this is I gotta ask this question. In a world where, let's say, there were robots that would look so real that you couldn't tell them apart, would would you sign a bill or vote for? This is getting down the geek. This is like politics in
I like it.
in a geek world. All right, would you like let's say a senator said, okay, we got all these robots here, we gotta mark them somehow, we gotta put a mark on them, we gotta make sure that their hands got an X on it or something like that, because we just got to be able to tell. Would you be on board with a legislation like that?
That's a tricky question. Because on one hand, I would firmly believe that if you get to a point where a robot is indistinguishable from a human, it would be more than just by appearance. Like, it would also be in their attitude and their behavior. And if it goes that far, sorry, then what is the difference? Like, and why would you want to make that distinction unless there's some kind of reason behind a prejudice? Like, if it is possible to reprogram a robot that looks human and acts human to do harm or have some kind of insidious virus inside the machine. If that were the case, then yeah, they should probably be marked in some way. But otherwise, that's just it's almost like a civil rights issue.
Like,
no,
yeah, it's like robot rights kind of thing would come up. What do you think, Thrash? Would you want them to be marked or not marked, or what?
I'm having flashbacks to that old sci-fi movie. Was it the Birth of the Humanoids? Where the robots become so advanced they become indistinguishable, and the humans, to fight back, form the Order of Flesh and Blood so they can put the robots back in their place where they belong. Supposedly it was Andy Warhol's favorite movie. But I would say I agree with Tug that if they're that indistinguishable, more than simply appearance, it would cause us to question, well, what is human? And if that were the case, it would be just in the form of discrimination. And once you start that, it's a slippery slope. I would have to say no. If you can make something that's human, in my opinion, it's human.
Yeah, well, I mean, if it's indistinguishable from human, I mean, I guess I would say in an appearance. I mean, you cut into it, you're going to find robot stuff. You know what I mean? It just looks human.
It's not like the rebooted Cylons, which are basically just human, right?
Yeah. For me, this is a tough one because, like, what if like this robot's applying for the same job you're applying for, and they can do it 20 times better than you? But then I guess the employer would choose the robot over you. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Well, that's an economics question.
Yeah. That's true. That is an economics kind of question. But I would like, well, look, this guy's got an unfair advantage. He's a robot. He's obviously going to be able to do, things that I'm not able to do. He's going to be able to memorize drink orders way better than I can, or whatever it is. He's not going to get tired, or, he's only have to plug in for 15 minutes and whatever. So I don't know. I could see it kind of going both ways. But that's neither here nor there. We're way off the subject. This is a crazy thought that came to me. But let's go to dark robots. Anybody who wants to go first, go. Let's go down the trail. Go ahead. And then we're gonna then do, after dark robots, we'll do remind me. We'll do annoying robots. Go ahead.
And since you threw cyborgs into the equation, I have to throw out my favorite bad guy robot, and that would have to be Doctor Who's the Daleks. Because now technically they're not total robot, because they're basically a battle chassis for basically a brain, which is they've devolved into. But they're the coolest robots in the world. They go around screaming exterminate. They have lasers. They destroy things. They're the bad guys, but they're awesome bad guys. And while they certainly supposedly they're not the number one Doctor Who villain, but they are in my book.
Bad robots. What about you, Tug? Tell me about a bad robot in TV science. Well, any direction you want to go.
Well, I mean, like, for me, the quintessential bad robot is the Terminator.
Yes.
And I think that kind of gets at the dark side of how robots are the reflection of humanity. Whereas the Terminator has looked at humanity, has judged humanity as basically being worthless, and has decided to exterminate it in the womb to stop it from, rising up against the robot future. And And the Terminator is just, it's so cold and so cruel and so unfeeling and so relentless. Um, and that's kind of like the fear of technology overtaking us. And, you know, as a science enthusiast, I don't like that idea, but it's still it's part of our psyche. It's something that we do worry about. And it's something that I think is beautifully portrayed in the Terminator. And I don't know, it changed the game in terms of how robots are looked at in science fiction.
Yeah. That's exactly where I was going to go as well with that, because the Terminator has some hokey scenes in it. You know, he's in the bathroom cutting his eye,
True.
whatever. And then when he's getting clocked at the end there, you know, it's a little cartoony, but it is such a dang good story that we overlook that. We don't even bring that up. And the reason why it's such a good story is because of what you mentioned. It is the quintessential what goes wrong with robots, like what goes wrong with a cyborg, what goes wrong, what's the possible outcome. And I think we're all afraid of that possible outcome of, well, then they take over. You know, we build them and then they're smarter, better, stronger, don't need to rest, don't, I mean, you know, then they
Just decide they don't need us. Yeah.
and then they decide that they decide they're done, they're done with us.
And Reese says it best in the movie when he says it doesn't feel, and it's very important, pity or remorse. It will never stop and reflect on what it's doing. Is when I'm doing the right thing? No, it's just going to do it. And then afterwards, never questions its decisions. It will never learn from these atrocities and say, I will not kill today. It will just keep on killing. I always go back to old stories of World War II. German soldiers oftentimes were hopped up on amphetamines, and they were referred to as these like fish-eyed goons, and they were basically almost like automatons in some battles. Some people say that's where the idea of zombies and the zombie fiction came from, where these just sort of I don't want to say mindless, but these very mechanical soldiers just kept coming at you and coming at you and coming at you, again because they were hopped up on amphetamines. But the Terminator is, as you say, the quintessential thing. It's a mechanical thing which will just never tire, will never slow down, and it will never reflect on whether or not what it's doing is right or wrong.
What does everybody think about the Blade Runner issues? Tell me a little bit about that. What are your thoughts on Blade Runner and the issues that are brought up there?
Is this an empathy test?
Blade Runner is more of a spiritual, religious question about how we treat the things that we create. It's a creation myth, basically. And the replicants in Blade Runner, like Roy Batty, all he wants is more life. He just doesn't want to die. And, you know, they've been given a time limit. Like they only live, I think, 4 or 5 years. I don't remember. And Roy Batty sees this as unfair. He just wants to live a life. He basically wants to be human. And this is a reality where the difference between a robot and a human, between a replicant and a human, is almost indistinguishable. It's there, but it's really hard to find. And yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
I lost it. It just disappeared in my brain.
Yeah, and it's one of those questions too that I've thought about is like, what about consciousness? You know, that do computers now have some, even, you know, right now have some kind of inner dialogue consciousness? I mean, it's programmed to do certain things, but we all know there's little quirks and things that happen, and as the computer and its programs are kind of talking and dialoguing with each other in these ones and zeros, even now, it's just like, okay, is that an early stage of consciousness? You know, it's a question that we all have to ask ourselves. Is this an early stage of self-understanding? And if so, then will that grow as our ability to make computers grow and learn and stuff like that? You know, I was driving, and I was driving to a friend's house, and I had Siri on to do the directions for me, and I was down in Las Vegas and going to a friend's house, and I didn't have my thing installed yet, where you clip the phone in. I had it down on the thing, and I took a turn and it tumbled. My phone tumbled, so I quickly, reached down when I could and pull it back up, and I set it there again. But for some reason, it was still talking to me, but it was still showing the thing, but it stopped talking. It stopped saying, take a right here, take a left here. And I don't know why. I have no idea why it stopped, but it showed the directions, but it didn't stop. It wouldn't tell me. It just showed them. And I said, hey, Siri, I need you to tell me the directions. Siri just came on just now as I said that. And
open the pod bay door, Hal.
And I said, I need you to tell me the directions. I said, I need you to talk to me. And she goes, I'm really more of a listener. I thought that was just, I'm like, okay, we are having a conversation now with an intelligent being, and it could all go wrong. I don't think it will, but there's always that potential, because I think the very fact that we think about it all going wrong is going to kind of prevent it, I personally speaking, from it all going wrong. I think we're good on the dark robot front. Although I do want to say that one of my favorite movies was I, Robot, and that's a dark. It's going wrong, but it's trying to look out for you, and that's another fear too. Not just that it's going to kill you like Terminator, like we just decide we don't need you, but also there's the fear of we're going to do what's best for you. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. We're going to do what's best for you. But now we get to the best part, and that is annoying robots. I've got a few in my, and then anything that we miss, I'll leave it open at the end for anything we want to throw out there as well, if we've missed anything in this conversation. But annoying robots. Tug, do you want to go first, or you want?
The only annoying robot I can think of off the top of my head is from Battlestar Galactica. The beep. I can't remember the name of the robot.
Oh yeah. Buck Rogers, though.
No, that's Buck Rogers. Yeah, Buck Rogers.
Yeah.
Twiggy.
Yes, Twiggy. Something like that.
He looked like a penis. On top
yes,
of
he did.
And he was voiced by Mel Blanc. I believe that was his last acting credit. Yeah, Mel Blanc.
Yeah,
the depths of your knowledge never cease to amaze me, Thrash.
I know. He's so good at it.
I try.
Yeah, I did want to kick that robot across the room. I'll give us a few to riff on, but let's go. Robert, you tell me a little bit about an annoying robot on
one
screen.
That always got to me.
Yes.
Small Wonder.
Oh gosh.
I tried watching that show once, and it was like nails on a blackboard, and I'm like, I can't do this. So yeah, Small Wonder was my annoying robot.
Oh, really? That was that. See for me, but look, I don't know. I haven't watched Small Wonder as an adult. And of course, you're a few years older than I am. So when I watched Small Wonder back then, but it does, she's so robot. She's like on, and nobody knows what's going on, except for the nosy neighbor kid next door. So the show is a little, I get that it was a little bit annoying as far as that goes, but yeah, she was annoying. But that annoyed me, because she acted like a typical, like, we made a robot and this is what you would think a robot would act like. I'm Vicky. I don't, and nobody even suspects it. None of the adults suspect it, though. That's what it was annoying about it for me. What was annoying about it for you guys? If you guys want to jump in on it.
Mostly it was just the voice for me, but like you were saying, the whole like pantomime of being a robot in the reality of this TV show, nobody notices that. It's such a disconnect for me. Yeah
Right on. Okay, I've got a few. Oh, did you want to add something to that, Thrash? Did you want to add something to that?
One more, and this is so annoying it became endearing. Marvin the Paranoid Android.
Oh, come on. That's like one of my favorite robots.
Well, exactly. But his shtick was he was an annoying robot, and yet somehow this made him endearing. So I cannot help but interject the irony of the whole situation. In fact, he actually had a song on Dr. Demento.
Oh, he
Marvin, I'm
did.
programmed for you. I am not making this up. He goes through his memory banks and he finds a message from this female robot telling him that she loves him. Problem is, he can't tell where the message came from. So he spends the rest of his life miserably ever after because he'll never find his true love. Now, I must say, I love Marvin the Paranoid Android in the TV miniseries.
Yeah.
I did not think he was as well applied in the feature film. I think they actually went for actual annoying in the feature film. But I did like the character of Marvin in the universe of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
I liked both. I liked him in
Really?
the movie as Alan Rickman doing the voice, and how like they defeat the Vogons using his depression. I thought that's great. You know.
Have you guys
Only
ever heard,
reach.
have you guys ever heard of the band Steampunk Giraffe? No. I forgot the name. Something Giraffe. Let's see here. I got to look it up because it's a very interesting. It's a band. They're I don't know, newer.
Well, there's Daft Punk who dress like robots.
No, it's
I took a stab at it.
it's Steam Powered Giraffe. I think yes, Steam Powered Giraffe.
Okay.
It's a steampunk band. They're not punk at all. I don't know why they call them punk. They do melodies and stuff like that, but they're pantomime robots, and they do an amazing job doing their robot thing, and they sing about robot issues. So it's a like a parody band. Honeybee would be a really good one to look up. They've gotten a little dark as of late, but the 2 Cent Show album is a really good album. But they talk about like being a robot and being a robot falling in love. It's they have a video out there called Honeybee. You would not believe these guys. They look like robots. They do pantomime like robots, and they sing about robot issues. They sing about, even in their shows and stuff, they talk about being created and their tailpipe not working and stuff like that. And it's really very interesting. That's a good robot thing. But I'm going to bring up 2 annoying robots. That dang annoying robot from Space Camp. Good night.
Yeah.
Man.
Wow. I haven't seen that movie in a really long time.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a horrible. I mean, that was like, oh, I'm gonna send my friend to space, and the other one was the robot in Rocky 4.
Oh God, yeah, good choice. Oh, I hate that thing.
Oh,
there's
man.
like a fan edit out there of Rocky 4, just where all the scenes of the robot are taken out.
Oh, really? What's interesting about the robot in Rocky 4 is there's a novelization of Rocky 4. And in the novelization, there's actually more of a romantic connection between Rocky's, is it his uncle or whatever, who's always talking to the robot, the one who's, I think it's his uncle.
Yeah, I think it's his wife's. It's like his uncle-in-law or something.
Yeah.
His wife's uncle.
Yeah, there's a more of a romantic connection between those two in the novelization of the book of the movie. So that's kind of weird. They like have a relationship actually, and
that goes down a different road with robots.
Well, we could get into that too. The whole sex robot thing happening. That what was that AI? Yeah, AI.
Yeah, Gigolo Joe. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, played by
Jude Law.
Jude Law, that's right. Yeah, Jude Law plays that.
I actually like that movie. I know a lot of people don't, but I really like it.
I did like it, but of course, Brian Aldiss is my favorite author of all time. But it had almost no connection to the source material.
Well, yeah, it was very, very different. Steven Spielberg was trying to be Kubrick, and you can see it. And Spielberg is not Kubrick, but I still really enjoy it. I can see all of its flaws, but I still enjoy it.
I understand that. There are things that you people have pointed. We've done this here on the channel where like they'll well, I don't like this movie because this and this and this, and I'm like, I see every single point you have, but I can't help it. I like the movie or the television show or something. It just, there's something about it that makes me look past all of those things. Like for me, like I actually enjoy, so I don't hate episode 1 of Star Wars. I don't hate it. I hate Jar Jar Binks, but I don't hate it. It's just like I actually kind of enjoy how they met, all this stuff. I mean, of course there's flaws in it and stuff, and I really don't like Jar Jar Binks. I mean, I can't stand him. But as far as the story goes, I didn't mind it at all. I mean, I didn't love it like I loved the original series, but I also didn't hate it. Like a lot of people really hated it.
Yeah,
So,
taken as its own thing, it's actually fine. Like I don't have a problem with it. I really love the pod racing sequence, and of course the battle with Darth Maul at the end. I mean, it's good stuff.
yeah, the battle with Darth Maul at the end had a really good sequence in it. I mean, that lightsaber sequence was actually very excellent.
I'm glad you brought that up. The battle was amazing, but they had to splice it up with Anakin Skywalker going up and then going back. Yeah. Whee!
I don't want to make fun of Jake Lloyd because what happened to that poor guy.
I feel bad for him. I don't blame Jake Lloyd. And I feel terrible what happened to him. Much like the guy who played Jar Jar Binks. I can't think of his name.
I feel bad even talking about that because he wanted to commit suicide.
Yeah,
you know,
he went through some dark stuff.
Yeah, and I'm like, dude, don't. Sorry, I mean, don't do that. But
I don't blame either one of them. They were actors who got the role of a lifetime. If I got the chance to be in a Star Wars movie and get a lot of money to be in a Star Wars movie, I'd take it. I don't care how stupid they make my character.
Yeah.
Now, history has taught us that's a bad idea because 87 billion Star Wars fans are going to torment you for the rest of your life. And that's tragic. But I don't blame them. It's not their fault that the movie was flawed. And let's just leave it at that.
Right. If Jar Jar Binks wasn't silly, like if he was just a character who helped them find Naboo and helped them go underground, and he was like a serious character, I would probably like the movie a whole lot more. You know what I mean? I mean, it wasn't the character, it wasn't the scripting of it. It was the silliness of it in
if
a
they
show
played
that's
him like
serious,
like Gnarl in Heavy Metal, or
Gollum. If they played him more like a Gollum kind of character,
that could have worked too. Or the Lion Man in Flash Gordon, where he's this sort of noble savage who just sort of, here, I'll take you on your journey, and that could have almost worked. Maybe a little more sanded down, but that could have worked. But they make him this sort of caricature, and it got old so fast,
so quickly.
Yeah.
It's just way too over the top. I mean, I know what he was going for. He's going for this like Japanese archetype of a character who is a bumbling idiot, but who somehow stumbles into doing everything right.
Yes, yeah.
But it's just played so ridiculously over the top. It's a cartoon, and it's a cartoon for like little children. It's horrible.
Yeah. He was definitely going for the children's market on that one. So final thoughts, any robots worth mentioning we want to talk about? Anything you want to throw out there, guys? Well,
I mean, Thrash kind of mentioned him, but we didn't talk about Hal. I think we have to talk about Hal, don't we?
All right. Yes. Well, we're the dark robot thing, Hal.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, go ahead, man. Talk about it.
Hal was one of these characters that was hyper intelligent, but something just snapped. Like in the book, it's not explained. In the movie, it's not explained. It's explained in the sequel, but I don't totally buy the explanation. But I like the idea that you've got this very complicated thing that has an emergent consciousness of its own. But if just like one little line of code goes wrong, if one little thing is off, it'll have disastrous, unexpected results.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Hal epitomizes. Now, in the books, Arthur C. Clarke tried to eventually redeem Hal as a character, which is kind of interesting for the books, but the Hal that we all know is Douglas Rain's voice from 2001 in the movie, the Stanley Kubrick movie, and that Hal, that voice is just so icy and so cold, but at the same time, also the most emotional character in the movie, which is really weird. But that's one of the geniuses of Kubrick. I don't remember where I was going. Again, my thoughts just got derailed.
No, it's okay. I totally understand. Yeah, that's one of those situations where he wants to live. You know what I mean? And it's one of those creepy situations that we hope never happens in real life. I don't really remember 2010. I know I saw it a few times, but I probably haven't seen it since it came out. But I didn't know they tried to redeem him.
They just try to explain where it came from. And in 2010, in the movie version, he sacrifices himself in the end to save the crew of the Discovery. But no, the other thing I really like about Hal, if I can get my brain to work properly, damn it.
You need to drink more of that Mountain Dew.
I do. I need more caffeine, really.
More.
Dang it! I was going to say something, and I completely lost it.
But as far as part twos go and robots, well, what about we're all having this problem tonight. This could be a Saturday Night Live skit. What about I can't remember. No, War Games.
What was that Monty Python bit where
I want to get back to that point about being distracted. Wait, what's that?
What War Games is another one.
Oh, too. War Games, Whopper.
Whopper. You remember the name of it? They all had these abbreviated names. So even Vicky from Small Wonder was like it meant something. It was I
don't know if anybody remembers it, but there was also Daryl from the 80s.
Oh yes, remember Daryl.
And I used to know what it stood for, but I don't remember anymore.
Yeah, and I remember another show. There was another show where the kid wasn't I can't remember the name of the show. The kid wasn't a robot. But his brother,
It's a twist.
Oh, but his brother told him he was, and that he was a killer Sam. I'm not that alone. And like he starts doing these crazy things, thinking that he's a robot. He starts like climbing on trucks and jumping over things and stuff like that, thinking like I guess his brother is like jealous of him, and he says, "You're not really part of this family. They adopted you. You're actually a robot. You're what's called a killer Sam." And so he starts acting this out. I don't remember the name of that. That's where we need BK on the air to come.
That sounds great.
It sounds a riot.
Yeah, I'll look it up. Killer Sam or whatever.
And as someone with two older brothers, totally buy the premise.
Okay, so you had two older brothers, so you really got the worst of it then, right?
Oh yeah. Definitely.
They don't treat you fair at all. They either trick you out of something or they beat you out of something. That's basically
exactly. Yes.
Trick you into beating.
Of course, if you ask them, I was spoiled brat. So
yeah, right. Exactly. You deserved every bit of it.
Right.
All right. Any other final thoughts, Thrash? Did you have any final thoughts on robots?
Two.
Yeah, okay.
There's two I'd just like to read into the record. One is something we didn't cover, the hottest robot, and I'm going to throw that out as Sherry Jackson's character from the Star Trek TOS episode, What Little Girls Are Made Of.
Yeah, good choice.
She rocked that strap dress. She really did. She was an amazing robot.
That's awesome.
And thank you. Oh, one other thing, by the way. Speaking of like robots and their forming intelligences, even societies, I actually mentioned this on my channel. I do a small spot on this. It was a short story by Brian Aldiss called "But What Can Replace a Man?" And it takes place after an extinction event where all the humans get wiped out, and the small group of robots decide they're going to form their own robot society. And it shows what things with an artificial intelligence might go through when trying to consider doing this, and it's one of my favorite short stories. It's in a number of his collections, but I actually have a review of it on my channel. And if you haven't read "But What Can Replace a Man," Please check it out. It's a great little short story.
Interesting. Okay. Well, just before we go, I want to have everybody give a shout out of their channel and what they're doing on the latest channel, on the latest whatever it is you got going on. Tug, let's start with you. You're our guest, please, by all means. What do you got going on? What's coming up next for you?
Well, right now I am editing a video on Poltergeist because it's October and I'm a YouTuber, so I have to talk about spooky subjects. Poltergeist has no sci-fi in it whatsoever, but I still like it. I grew up on it. But also every Thursday now I'm putting out a review of Outer Limits episode where I do like one episode every week. And let's see, on this coming Sunday, I'm doing a live stream where I watch Nosferatu with a couple of guests.
Oh, cool.
And also, since we're on the subject, Thrash, 2 weeks after that, I'm going to be doing Night of the Living Dead. And I was wondering if you wanted in.
I would be honored.
Because I know how you feel about that movie. So
count me in. I Wild horses couldn't keep me from it.
Awesome.
Yes, thank you. I'd be honored.
Right on. And Thrash, what do you got going on over at your channel?
Well, I kind of just plugged my channel, but I will continue to plug it. I've been having a lot of fun with these Thursday live chats. Dave hasn't been able to use his time slot per se as much, so I've been doing it generally during his time of 8-ish. But even on nights where I can't, I do the after party, say 9:30, which I will be doing tonight when I wrap up with you young men. I'm going to be doing an after party tonight and see where the conversation takes us. I've been doing more of my creepy classics. That's where I take an up-tempo top 40 song that everyone knows and loves, and when you listen to the words, you kind of go, ew.
Yeah.
Also, my series on dad jokes.
Yes,
but
I love that series.
But I've been trying to stay also with good old fashioned science fiction. It's October, so I'll pretty much be sticking to horror per se. But science fiction, of course, is my first love and the first love of this channel. And I have a few surprises of sci-fi posts coming up in the not too distant future.
Awesome. And as always, everybody, please, I will leave their links in the description box below. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. And just remember, if you're listening to this on podcast, leave a review, share it on your social media, leave a rating. That means the world to us. And of course, you're always invited over to the YouTube channel where we have more content over on the YouTube channel. But whether you're listening on YouTube, watching on YouTube, or on podcast, it doesn't matter to me. I'm just glad that you're listening and thrilled that you're either listening and watching. And if you're on YouTube, if you're one of the YouTube people, please don't forget to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the share button. Those 3 things are free for you, and they mean the world to me as I am trying to grow this channel. And every subscriber helps out so much. I want to thank you, Tug, for being a guest today. Really,
thank you for having me. Yeah,
yes, and Thrash, I want to thank you. I feel a little left out, though. You got to think of something that you can include me on over on your channel one of these days,
Definitely
as well. But speaking of that, though, we will be doing, and I hope that you're okay with this, we're going to be doing a live Monday stream, not this Monday, but the next Monday, and you're going to be our guest. So if that's okay with you, we're going to be talking about robots, because what I like to do is so I just released, by the time this comes out, it'll already be released, but it's kind of get to, so everybody knows what's going on. I just released the disabilities and entertainment one is released for my my Honeycomb Hideout Club, and it'll be released to the public tomorrow. And then Monday we'll be talking about that on the program. So the same thing with this program here. I'll be releasing it sometime this upcoming week before Monday, and then Monday we'll be talking about it. Give people a chance to listen, have their own ideas, then chime in on the live chat. So please, by all means, I'll link you in. Okay.
Absolutely. That sounds like a lot of fun. I can't wait to see what the commenters have for us.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, Monday at 6:30 my time. I think that's 7:30 your time.
Perfect.
It's been a pleasure to have you. And literally though, like anytime you want to come on the program, be like, hey, I've got a good idea for a show, let me know. I mean, I'm an open book. I'm always looking for stuff to talk about. So please, and yeah, please by all means. So thank you everybody, and we will talk to you all again real soon. Stay safe, stay